Welcome to Unlock Your Child's Full Potential. I'm Billy, mom of three, positive parenting coach, and your guide to raising kids with connection, not control. Here we talk about parenting without punishments and constant power struggles, building deep bonds, and creating a home where kids want to listen, so you can enjoy family life to the fullest. Today I'm talking with Katherine Sellery, the CEO and founder of the Conscious Parenting Revolution. For over 20 years, she's been coaching parents, educators, and professionals all over the world on how to reduce misunderstandings, avoid meltdowns, and create more cooperation and connection with kids. She's lived in Hong Kong for decades, bringing a deep understanding of different cultures to her work, and she's shared her insights on multiple TEDx stages. Katherine's here today to remind us that while expert advice can be valuable, we as parents are still the ultimate experts on our own kids. I'm so excited for this conversation. Hi, Katherine. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Very excited. Thank you.
Let's get right into it, shall we?
Great.
Okay. One thing that's been on my mind lately is how much modern parents struggle to trust themselves. It feels like we're drowning in expert advice, and half the time the experts don't even agree with each other. And parenting can start to feel like a performance where we're afraid of messing up, trying to get everything right, and overthinking every decision. And at the same time, we do need to keep learning. We don't want to just repeat the same patterns from our own childhood, like spanking, yelling, punishing, just because we turn out fine.
I know.
And
Yeah.
now we know better and we want to do better. So here's my question. How can parents find that sweet spot between educating themselves, breaking old patterns, and not losing touch with their own intuition or getting paralyzed by perfectionism?
Such a good question. I do think that, we're toggling between a lot of things. And self-doubt is sometimes it comes along with us throughout our lives around a lot of different things, including our parenting. I guess I would say that when there's something in you that is an inner sense of things that is not happy with you, that's your first clue that maybe there's something about the way I went around having a conversation about that or trying to adjust a behavior that I was troubled by that I need to look at. Maybe there's something there I need to look at. So again, I guess it's going back into your own intuition and sense of things to let your inner guides guide us in sensing what works, what doesn't work, and allowing that not in anything but an educational way, not as a way to go into some spiral around self-criticism or a shame thing, but more of curiosity, like, wow, there's something in me that's really been thinking about this over and over again. That's a sign.
I like the word
That's a
curiosity.
sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being curious about that, something that keeps wanting you to wonder about the situation. That's our own operating system, letting us know that there was something about that conversation, the way we disciplined, our conflict resolution, our approach to a problem, that something in us isn't happy about.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Can you share a real life example, like maybe from a family you work with or your own personal experience when you leaned to trust yourself more and that made a real difference in the connection with the child?
Sure. So I can recall in my own parenting journey with I have two kids, where there was a situation, and I just remember saying to my daughter, if I could have had this conversation with my parents when I was your age, it would have changed my life. And there was a really deep knowing that what I was crafting at that moment was so outside of my family of origin that it was never something I'd experienced. I was truly on uncharted territory, trying to forge authentic conversations about difficult subjects that were open and vulnerable and could truly change the course of our relationship.
We sometimes feel that we have to know everything, we have to show up as strong. And our children have this opinion of us like we are all-knowing, almighty, and then they see it's not like that. The whole world crashes. So it's good to be open from the beginning. You know, something I'm starting to notice, some parents who don't want to rely on control and punishments have swung the pendulum the other way. They've heard of positive parenting, maybe tried a few things, either decided that it doesn't work, or they think they're doing it, but it feels like the child is running the house. And I feel that's misguided too. How do you help those families find balance?
I spend a lot of time right here with people in my coaching program who have thrown the baby out with the bathwater, if you want to look at it that way. So, in their desire not to use power and control, which I'm sure you know activates retaliation, rebellion, and resistance, the three R's, just to recognize that some of the quote unquote responses to power and control fall into this category of what we call the three R's. And they're activated by our approach to problem solving. So when we are able to recognize that we're in the land of the three R's, we don't want to continue to activate. And so then what can often happen is going too far in the direction of permissive parenting, not speaking up when you needed to, not drawing a line when one was really important to draw, and not knowing how to be the leader in your parenting journey without that falling back on power and control. There's something called the protective use of force, which is very different than a controlling style of discipline. From the outside, they might look a little bit alike because it's still about saying no. It's still about drawing lines. And the difference, I guess, is aggressive versus assertive. An aggressive parent is really activated, I think, by concern. And they're using a modality that is almost guaranteed not to get what they want. That's the sad part, is that even though I still believe that parents who are inclined to use that approach are doing it out of the goodness of their heart, out of the best intentions, out of everything that one would hope is in behind this choice. And I think they activate the three R's, and then they blame the child for their response as if they were not involved in creating it. Then they find themselves lost in the land over to the far side of permissiveness, doormat parenting, where they don't know how to toggle the line between being able to use protective force, which is to say something like, I know you really want to go to this and that you're really excited about this party, say for an older kid. And I'm really worried because I don't know if there are any parental controls in that family. And it's kind of an everything goes. And as a result, I'm afraid that you're going to get stuck in a situation which you may not even want to be in. And you can be really mad at me for saying no to this. And maybe you make up a story, I don't trust you. And it's really not even about that. It's about being able to recognize that there are situations that are going to be really complicated in this potential party that we haven't even dealt with yet. So maybe we use it as an opportunity to deal with those conversations. What's going to happen if you get there and there is, say, drugs or alcohol, and it's way inappropriate for this age child? So how do you feel? What would you do? I mean, it could open the door to those kind of conversations.
Yeah, I think the difference is the tone. You're keeping your calm and explaining your reasons for not letting the child go, because otherwise you're not going, you're grounded, or some
Yeah.
kind of either
And it
or.
turns into a you don't trust me conversation, where
Yeah.
really trust is not the situation. It's just that we can be putting our kids in harm's way, or we can be providing some guidance around situations that could put them in harm's way, and just using our parental instincts to be able to protect them from harm.
Yeah, that's so true. Because otherwise, being permissive is almost like you don't care that much. to set those boundaries.
That's exactly right. And that's what the research shows, is that people who grow up with permissive parenting have the experience that you didn't even care enough about me to put some barriers in place to protect me from this or that or the other bad experience. So it's funny that if you had to choose between overbearing and permissive, actually the research would say overbearing is better.
Is better. Yeah.
At least I
Well,
know you cared.
I know. But some parents are finding that even the young children don't respond to that kind of controlling parenting.
They get
They're,
fired. Parents are fired by their kids all the time. They just don't listen to them. They don't respond. They don't hear it as love and concern. They hear it as power and control, and you don't trust me.
yeah, and they act out more. In a perfect world, what would be the approach, the right approach with these kids, the so-called strong-willed kids?
The strong-willed kids that I call the really autonomous ones, who are prepared to risk your disapproval in order to be really connected to their own sense of like their vision, those are the kids that really don't respond to power and control. More than anyone, that's the kid that if you want to fail, use power and control, and they'll just say, fine, I'll just stay in the room the rest of my life. You can't make them do what you want them to do. And
Right,
they're not
yeah.
responding to the use of controlling forms of parenting, and whatever your threats are, they're just going to fall on deaf ears. So that's the parent that you really ultimately have got to look at using a guidance approach where you're leaning in, you're not saying yes when you mean no. You're still true and congruent to your own sense of things, but not out of a desire to punish the child for disrespecting you, because I don't believe that even happens. I think it might feel like that, and your mind might go to that story and you might label it with those words, but I don't think that's what's really going on. I think you've got a kid who's trying to figure out how to do their vision and deal with this outer voice that wants them to do something else, but hasn't really thought about like why they don't want to do the thing you're asking them to do. So that's where really leaning into, I can see you're really struggling to say yes to my request. And that even though I've explained it and I've thought I've been really clear about all the good reasons why I think this is the best way for us to go, you're still a solid no. So tell me more about what's going on for you. Like, what is it about this other thing that you want to do so badly that's getting in the way of you saying yes to me? I want to know more about that. So we have to kind of pivot away from just restating our desire over and over again and leaning into listening to what's going on for them. Like, what's getting in
Yeah.
the way of that?
How can we make it work for both sides?
How
Right.
can we make it work? So I'd like to say a no to you is a yes to something inside of themselves. So let's get curious again about what they're saying yes to.
I love that. And we
Internally.
we start treating them with the same dignity and respect that we demand from them.
Yeah, exactly. And then they get to see what it looks like.
Yeah. I love something you've said. Children are people too. They need to be respected and regarded as the individual people they are. That's so
Yeah,
true.
so true. I can see we're on the same page.
It's hard sometimes. Like
Yeah,
sometimes you're in a rush. We need to go out. You don't have time to explain to the little 5-year-old why they need to put their shoes on and go now because we're late
for
to work.
sure.
So there are challenging times, and I don't think we have to be perfect and do it right every day, every time. We can mess up and go back and apologize.
We absolutely can. And you, I mean, you pick the flash points, transition points when you're under the gun to get somewhere, when you're in a rush. I mean, that's when a lot of the conflict happens. So if we want to minimize the conflicts in those really rough periods of our day, the best way to do that is to be sure you're taking care of yourself. So the self-care aspect, so that you're, if you want to use Maslow as an example, you're meeting your needs: food, air, water, sleep, connection, belonging, psychological safety. And really, all of your underlying needs need to be met just like your child's and anyone else's. So taking good care of you, which again is a great model for your kids to see what taking good care of looks like. And it also teaches them it's okay to take care of themselves. And then, am I giving this relationship the time it needs? So the stronger the relationship is, when you hit those flashpoints, they really go smoothly. And so if you want those flashpoints to go smoothly, take care of these other two times.
I love to use the example of a bank account, the emotional bank account. If you make deposits during the day, then
Yep.
the connection
Yeah,
is strong.
absolutely.
And I love to unpack the trap of obedience. Like you've spoken about the dangers of making obedience the ultimate goal in parenting
Mm,
and how that actually can backfire. When we focus too much on well-behaved kids, kids who never
mm,
rock the boat, who put others' comfort ahead of
mm,
their own, that we can teach them self-betrayal. Can we
mm.
talk a little bit more about that? I find that
Sure. One of
fascinating.
my favorite subjects. So, we talked a little bit about the autonomous child who's prepared to risk your disapproval, and that we look at them as the difficult kids. I think they're really healthy. I think they're so healthy, and that they're trying to toggle between inner sense of things and these outer voices in their world and how they interact with them. Then we have the belonger, the ones who are prepared to just throw themselves under the bus, betray themselves in service to the other. They are really struggling to speak up if any of the outer voices around them, when they do that, explode. And so they just submerge their own inner sense of being constantly. And they find that in their friend relationships, in their relationships with their parents, subsequently in relationships with partners, maybe they don't know where their voice is. That gets dangerous. It gets dangerous because we should be the safest place for them to practice their speaking up for themselves. And this is the relationships, that womb where those skills get honed so that they're able to be in touch with that inner voice and in the relationships that matter to them. And I really want to emphasize, in the relationships that matter to them, they're also really considerate of what the message is from that other person. So it's a life skill. And
Hmm.
for those belongers who are so worried about disappointing us and so worried about even our face looking unhappy, that they will modify their own self in order to not risk any of that displeasure, we have to give them explicit permission to disappoint us.
How does that look in real life?
In real life, that looks like you saying to your little belonger, I want you to know it's okay to get mad at me. I want you to know it's okay to have feelings and needs that may not be congruent with my requests that you may experience as demands. I want you to know that you are always going to be loved, regardless of whether you rock the boat or you don't. And that I really hope you learn to rock the boat, because that's important that we learn to do that. Because there are so many situations in life where we get to find that skill of rocking the boat. And we've got to cultivate it, because honestly, most places won't.
Yeah, that's so true. And the trouble is that those kids, I think, are the silent ones. Like they don't talk much. They don't tell you how they feel. They don't tell you about their day and what was hard and what upset them. And you kind of wonder what's happening inside their heads.
They're very focused on other people. It's almost codependency, right? So in a codependent relationship, you would be able to tell what everybody else in the room is thinking and feeling and needing. They're so tuned in to the outer world. And in a really healthy relationship, they're tuned into you, but they're also tuned into themselves.
And you have the term for it, a protected child.
The
Yeah,
fact of
meets
my
your needs.
heroes. Yeah, Alice Miller. Maybe you're familiar with Alice Miller. And The Drama of the Gifted Child was a really amazing piece of literature that changed my life and certainly helped me see through dynamics that were cultivated in my family of origin, where really the caregiver has grown up in a world where they're not seen, heard, and understood from their perspective. And therefore, they raise children to see them, reflect back to them, be there for them. And that's actually the opposite of what the caregiver's job is. The caregiver's job is to be able to tend to their own inner emotional requirements and needs, not to ask it of their children. In fact, if they're communicating anything, they're communicating, I am good. I do not need you to make me happy. You will never make me sad. I am the one responsible for my feeling realm. I will never blackmail you into thinking your actions and behavior give rise to how I feel, because I know the difference between when someone catalyzes a feeling in me and is the cause of it. And that distinction is so blurred or non-existent when the caregiver is blaming their feelings. You look at how you've made me feel. Look at the gray hairs you've given to me. I mean, they literally blame their own experience on children being obedient and compliant or not being obedient and compliant. There's no separation and individuation. They don't allow the child to actually develop their own sense of self. They don't allow the child to be able to do things that maybe are disappointing to me, but at the same time, I'm able to see that that's their expression of themselves. And yeah, I wish it was something different, but a part of me is so darn happy that they had the gumption to be true to themselves. So
It
the
sounds like
expecting
all
is
parents
that
should
action.
go to therapy before they become parents.
It would be so great if parents could be emotionally healed when they start parenting, because otherwise, I guess we both probably see a lot of it, is that they are blaming their children for their happiness or
Yeah.
their unhappiness.
And I
After a
think
while, children get all confused about what they're responsible for. Am I responsible for your happiness? Am I responsible for your sadness? Did that job really fall on my shoulders? And as we know, it's not possible to make your emotional needs someone else's responsibility.
yeah, and they make decisions based on, am I making my mama proud or am I fulfilling their view of my
Exactly.
life?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we have all the films in the world and a lot of literature, fiction, nonfiction, that covers this one dynamic.
And I think that's one of the reasons many parenting tools people don't think they work, because first you have to go in and take care of yourself, the emotional part of it, and not just looking for tools.
Yeah,
But
that's true. You have to have a sense of your own self. So if your listeners, and I'm sure there are going to be some out there who've experienced being cathected, this may be a real wake up call for them. This may be that moment in which they're like, oh my God, I spent my whole life trying to make my mom happy or my dad happy, or you're like, I felt like that was my job.
yeah,
And they went to, all lengths to try to do that and probably feel disappointed because it's impossible to take on that job. It's just impossible. But it's painful to recognize that you weren't allowed to separate and individuate, and that the attempts that you probably had to do so were described as some kind of a betrayal to them.
I think most parents are still working on finding their own inner voice. And that's why it's so difficult to raise children who are in tune of their own sense of self.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And if you could leave parents listening today with one reminder, like something they can hold on to the next time they feel they're failing, what would that be?
I usually say to parents when they see their kids acting in ways that they want to call bad, or if they're acting in ways that embarrass you in public, we call that the tragic expression of the unmet need. That if the kids had the skills to be able to express their inner sense of things using words like that describe it as sad, mad, whatever, we call it, name it to tame it. On the other hand, I think really, in addition to just seeing beyond all of those behaviors, see your children beautiful, I think we probably need to see ourselves that way too. So, being able to see yourself beautiful, being able to love the parts of you that are still struggling to find the right words to say or to create the right atmosphere in which those words could actually be delivered and matter, because you've worked through all of the retaliation, rebellion, resistance. So once the resentment flow is cleared out of the room, and that's usually the first thing that I address when people enter into my programs is, let's get the 3 R's out of the room, because they make up 75% of behavioral disruptions. So let's reduce the number of problems that we have substantially. And then the ones that are left, we can get to the front side of so much more easily. So when we want to make ourselves bad and wrong, self-compassion is probably the number one tool. Just compassion for that part of you that's not perfect, because God knows if we can just model, it's okay not to be perfect to our kids, we are doing a great job.
That's such a good point. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves, and it makes the
Yeah.
job even tougher.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay not to be perfect.
And is there something we didn't get to touch upon that you really wanted to share with the listeners today?
No, I think the key things for me are recognizing those outbursts and behaviors are usually one of the 3 R's, that you can eliminate them by changing your approach to conflict resolution. And that there are other ways and other skills that can really bring about extremely different outcomes. And that it's worth it to take the time to up level your own skills and to heal yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, conflict resolution, that's a big thing. And we usually expect our kids just to listen and be obedient, and we are not engaging in a conversation, a real conversation on how to resolve that conflict.
I mean, maybe we end with this. We touched on obedience and compliance and what's dangerous about it, but I don't know if people really understand fully how dangerous it is. So in all the studies on child sexual abuse, the number one protective factor was the ability for a child to be able to say no. That is the number one protective factor. That has to be cultivated. For a child to overcome the psychological differential between a young and an adult is already hard. So if you really want to protect your children, you teach them how to say no. You let them say no to you. You encourage them to, as we said before, be true to themselves, even if it's difficult in this outer relationship and requires more skills on your part to wonder more often, why are they saying no to me? But don't get rid of that no. That no is really important.
Oh, yeah, it's essential. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I'd love for listeners to know more about the work you do. If someone is hearing all this and thinking, I need more of Katherine in my life, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. Go to freeparentingbook.com and you can download 7 strategies to keep your relationship with your kids from hitting the boiling point. And you can go to the Conscious Parenting Revolution, and we actually have a community there you can join. And I have a lot of resources that I just give away. If you really want to deep dive, then I do have a 90-day parenting or family reset is what we call it, where we just reset the family dynamics. And over the course of 90 days, I do weekly coaching calls with my clients in a group setting, and everybody can share what's going on in ways that they benefit from each other's journeys.
I love that. I love group settings. I'm not one of the people that goes out and share their problem, but I learn from others when
That's
they
what my
share and get
community
coached.
says all the time is, first of all, I think people begin to feel so safe that they do want to share their own situations, and they don't have to.
Thank you, Katherine. This was amazing.
Thank you. This was so great. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Katherine Sellery. I hope it gave you a new perspective on what it really means to raise kids who thrive. Not just kids who are well behaved, but kids who are connected to themselves, confident in their voice, and deeply respected as people. I also want to let you know that I won't be releasing new episodes for a while. So if you've been meaning to catch up on past episodes or revisit your favorites, now is a great time. I'm so grateful to have you here as part of this community, and I hope the conversations we've shared continue to support and inspire you on your parenting journey.